Hi, it's Scott, ROCKFILE, back with another podcast review for you. Let's talk about the 2025 film, The Gorge. Start by saying I'm not a streaming fan. I don't usually have Netflix or anything else other than Amazon because I'm a Prime member, and that may go away this year. But I picked up Apple because I wanted to see this movie. Literally, it's $10 a month. For $10, I'll watch this movie. I'll watch Severance. I'll watch Monarch, and I'll probably get rid of it at the end of the month. I watched it because Scott Derrickson directed it. I've met this director. He's a nice guy. He worked with C. Robert Cargill again, who produced it, usually writes things. Miles Teller executive produced it. He also stars in it. Anya Taylor-Joy is in it. All of that was like, oh, I have to see it. It's on Apple? Crap. I was hoping it got a theatrical release. After watching it, I see why it didn't. Sigourney Weaver also stars in it. Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross do the music. A lot of people worked on the special effects. The credits are really long. It has a very interesting setup. It goes along very well for its first hour, and then it becomes kind of a different movie, arguably almost better movie. I wish it wasn't a streaming movie. I mean, obviously there was at some point probably going to be a theatrical release because literally there are hundreds of special effects people and stuff that worked on this. The credits were really long for a streaming movie. Zach Dean wrote the movie. He's gone on to write some other science fiction and big budget movies that are coming, but he hasn't done a whole lot before this. It's an interesting idea that gets more preposterous as it goes, but what do you want in a science fiction horror movie? I could pick it apart and go, well, there's easier ways they could have done this when you finally find out what's going on and all that stuff, but taking the movie on its face value, which most people do to watch a streaming film, it's not bad at all. At any point in it that I was almost to that point where I'm getting a little, they would do something else. They would keep it interesting. That's the direction of Scott Derrickson. I think he did a workmanlike job on it. I don't think it shows great flair or style, but pretty much anything he puts out, he's able to create tension. He's directed Doctor Strange. He directed Sinister. He directed Black Phone. The sequel of that is coming out soon. So anyway, they directed this back in 2023. It finally came out this weekend on Apple. Had I seen this in the theater, I'd probably be a little more hard on it, but it was something streaming on a Friday night, and it wasn't bad at all. Like I said, the first hour, it builds up this very interesting idea that there's this giant gorge that needs to be protected from whatever's in the gorge. And the East has one person on one side and the West has another. They are stationed there for a year, and their job is to refill the machine guns, do maintenance on everything, and keep watch for a year, and then they're replaced by somebody else. There's deeper things going on, and they introduce some other things, but that's basically the gist of the plot, and the two sides are not supposed to ever talk to each other. Matter of fact, it's kind of difficult because they're on either sides of this gigantic gorge, which you probably saw in the trailers. Well, eventually they do talk, and they kind of have a little romance, and I like Anya Taylor-Joy. She's great in the film, very likable, and I like Miles Teller. I mean, to me, he's okay as a modern star, but he does a good job with this, and he really, both of them were acting like this was a pretty A-list serious movie when it's kind of a B-movie Friday, Saturday streaming thing. You know what I mean? Like, it wraps up with a neat little bow, and it's over, and you'll forget about it. You'll remember a couple of scenes. You'll remember that you like the characters, but other than that, this will be a pretty forgettable film, and that's kind of how I define most streaming things. That when they're done, they're like cotton candy. They're just gone. Nosferatu is a movie that I just got recently, or even Constantine from 20 years ago. Got both of those early this week. They come out next week on 4K. Both movies just have that extra oomph that made them theatrical spectaculars. Both of them very different movies, very different budgets, very different directors, but both of them are great examples of films that are so much better than streaming, that there's so much more meat on the bones, so much more to watch. Where streaming movies, I'm not going to say they're dumbed down, they're just kind of simplified. You don't want a whole lot of meat on the bones. Now, I know there are dramas out there and some other movies that are deeper, and that's not what this was supposed to be, but even for this kind of science fiction horror movie, had it been a theatrical release, it would have been more complex. There would have been more characters. It wouldn't have been such a chamber pot piece. But that being said, it was crafted to be this from its get-go. From what I gather, it didn't feel like anything was cut out or wait, we're going to do something else. This seems like from beginning to end, this was the story that they planned and intended to make. And for that, I was entertained for 2 hours, a little over 2 hours. My streaming experience wasn't great. I don't use the apps on my TV very much. I prefer discs for a specific reason. One, I don't have hyper fast internet here in Alaska. I got basically about 50 to 60 meg download speed, which is barely enough for 4K. And thankfully, my Apple app in my TV was showing this in Dolby Atmos with Dolby Vision HDR engaged. About 15 minutes into the movie, I had to reboot the app, and about 15 minutes before the end of the movie, I had to reboot the app. This is why I got rid of my Sony 4K player and got a Panasonic, so I wouldn't have to get pauses in the middle of movies that take me out of the action. So you've got two people who are very good at what they do. Anya Taylor-Joy's character is an assassin. Miles Teller is an ex-military sniper who's kind of a soldier of fortune these days. And we get a little background to both before they're given this assignment to protect this gorge. Now, the movie stays as far away from it can on explaining what's in the gorge as it can and pushes that as far as it can. But when you finally see what's coming out of the gorge, I was a little shocked in a good way. That's not what I expected. Well, we just watched the movie Elevation, right? And you got some cheesy monsters that are right out of A Quiet Place or something. These are not that. And they obviously spent a lot of money on the special effects because I don't want to give anything away, but the second half of the movie takes place in a different location than the first half of the movie, and it becomes a different thing. Now, when you find out what's going on, it's logical within the mythology of the movie and all. It's all pretty preposterous. The fact that they couldn't contact each other, the fact that they only have two people guarding this incredibly important thing, the fact that, well, I can't get into spoilers about it because I want you to see it. The movie just came out yesterday. I didn't realize that when I watched it. I was just like, oh, I've been hearing about this movie. I want to watch it. Oh, it debuts tonight. Oh, all right. Like I said, compared to streaming movies, this is one of the better streaming things I've watched in the last couple of years. It was entertaining from beginning to end. I didn't ask a whole lot of questions, and it didn't pose too many. It just kind of plays out the way it does, and you've got endearing characters doing some pretty exciting things. Scott Derrickson's direction keeps the tension on when there needs to be, and I got to say, for the last half, it kind of kept the pedal on the metal. You get this nice romance, you get this nice endearing quality from the two characters, you get to know them really well, and then they're put into a meat grinder, so to speak. There's a lot of special effects. There's a lot of stuff I won't talk about. It's all well done. There's a lot of practical stuff. There is some CG effects, and those are also pulled off very well. Like I said, the credits had hundreds of special effects experts working on this film. It plays out like a theatrical movie, a lot of it, not all of it. All in all, when it was over, I was satisfied. I was happy that it ended. I don't think I have to add this to my Blu-ray movie collection. I think it's one that was a streaming movie. I enjoyed it. We'll talk about it at the water cooler on Monday at work, and you'll probably listen to this podcast to decide whether or not you're going to watch it. I don't want to say anything bad about it because, everybody's acting well in it. It's directed well. It's an interesting idea, executed well. It's just not an Academy Award-winning film. It's just not one of the best movies of the year. It's fine for a Friday or a Saturday night to binge watch with some popcorn. It's a little over 2 hours long. I didn't felt it dragged at all. I thought there was just enough characterizations, just enough special effects, just enough action. They kept the whole thing working like a well-oiled machine. And when it was over, I'm like, I'll have to do a review of it. The Gorge was actually really good for a streaming movie. And I hate to put that on it. My buddy Chris and I were having that conversation today. He's like, I don't think there's much distinction anymore because Amazon, Netflix, and others are releasing these in theaters. But to me, some of the movies that come out on streaming services for a reason. That they just are not theatrical. And yes, they're terrible movies theatrical, but they were always meant to be a theatrical experience. This movie doesn't feel like so much of a theatrical experience. It feels like a streaming experience, that the whole idea was conceived to be watched at home. I'm sure it blows up quite well. I mean, like I said, the special effects are quite good in the film. But again, it didn't feel like some of the other movies I've watched recently. Even I watched a low-budget UK found footage film from 2013 that felt more theatrical than this. But again, you have A-list actors doing a really good job. You have an A-list director also doing a really good job. The Gorge, if you have Apple, I'd watch it. Go watch it. It's really good. If you don't have Apple, I don't know if you need to subscribe for it, but you should watch Severance and Monarch and a few other things. So put this on the list. It's better than most Amazon streaming movies and better than most Netflix streaming movies. Is it? Like I said, to me, the biggest thing is I don't really need to add it to my collection to rewatch every couple of years. It was just fine for a Friday night entertainment. So check out The Gorge. Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy do a great job protecting us from the Gorge. Not giving anything away here. Check it out. More podcasts are on the way. I'm actually putting this in front of some others I had planned because, well, it just came out yesterday and I need to, go for that algorithm kind of stuff. So please like, share, and subscribe, and have a spectacular day.